So we're off to the BBC archives to see if we can find the tapes from 2002. So let's go and see if we can locate them. It's been over 20 years since I saw these tapes. And on these tapes, the biggest story of my career.
Stephen Watson with the Irish squad en route to the World Cup.
It is weird watching it back. It's also weird seeing yourself over 20 years ago. That's odd as well, and sounding completely different than I do now. It was tremendously exciting heading off to one of the biggest sporting events in the world.
In 2002, newspapers were still a huge part of the media landscape. The internet was in its infancy. And to the whole country's absolute delight, the Republic of Ireland's football team had qualified for the World Cup finals, with soccer superstar Roy Keane leading them as captain.
Ireland have done it. They are on their way to the World Cup finals for the third time in the country's history.
For the World Cup quarter-final stage, at least, we're going to get Spain or Paraguay in our second round, so why not? We took them before, we'll take them again.
Time for Sports. Stephen is here, and local football.
I'm Stephen Watson, a sports presenter with BBC Northern Ireland. In the Irish Premiership table with 6 games in hand, Linfield extended their lead to 11 points at the top, thanks to... I had just joined from our rivals, UTV, so I was just finding my feet in a new job within the BBC.
Barely in the door at the BBC, Stephen was given a dream assignment, covering the biggest sports story of the year, the Football World Cup.
I was sent to Saipan with a brief to simply cover the Republic of Ireland football team, their pre-training camp in Saipan.
Irish captain Roy Keane and his team are off to the Orient to take on the best in the world, en route to Japan and Korea via a week's training camp in Saipan.
To prepare for the humid conditions, the team would acclimatise on the tiny Pacific island of Saipan before travelling on to Japan for their final week's preparation.
As the Republic of Ireland depart here at Dublin Airport, they know they've got 2 weeks to fine-tune before their first group game of the tournament against Cameroon. Stephen Watson with the Irish squad en route to the World Cup.
As a sports reporter, Stephen would get to witness the Ireland team's World Cup campaign up close and personal.
Journalists back then often travelled with sporting teams, and on this occasion, the journalists covering the Republic of Ireland team all travelled with the team as well.
That would put Stephen close to one of the biggest football stars in Ireland, or anywhere else, the captain, Roy Keane.
Captain Roy Keane and his team are off to the Orient to take on the best in the world.
Keane was probably at his zenith as a player, as a personality. He was the most recognised person, probably in Irish life. He couldn't go anywhere without anybody wanting a piece of him. If you were a journalist and wanted to get Keane, it wasn't easy to get hold of Roy. But if you got Keane on a good day, on a going day, he was gold dust.
Roy Keane was an icon of Irish soccer. He was the captain of Manchester United, one of the biggest football clubs in the world. He was the captain of the Republic of Ireland football team. A formidable character, a tough player. You know, he had a reputation of being, hard as nails.
Stephen was travelling with some of the best sports journalists in Ireland on the plane. All of them looking for a story. Among them, Stephen's opposition from the Republic of Ireland's national broadcaster, RTE.
BBC Northern Ireland and RTE are obviously huge rivals. We're all there trying to get the biggest stories, and we're trying to get them out first.
Back in 2002, I was sports editor for RTE News. We always go with the team, and inevitably there's a story, and it's often a story that has nothing to do with football. I knew when we landed that it was a beautiful place. I knew that we wanted to reflect some of that.
This is Saipan, a lush tropical island in the Western Pacific, base camp for the Republic of Ireland for the next 5 days.
We wanted to give people a sense of the lap of luxury that the boys in green were enjoying before moving on to the serious business of competing at the World Cup.
Also on the plane representing RTE Radio was their veteran sports commentator.
On the line now is our soccer commentator, Gabriel Egan.
I need to do a couple of voice pieces in the day and then try, of course, and get audio. Do an interview with a player or two, or certainly go to the press conference, get a few words with Mick McCarthy or one of the coaching staff.
All the journalists travelling to Saipan wanted to write about Roy Keane, but there was one big story about him they were keeping quiet. His acrimonious rift with team manager Mick McCarthy.
People didn't like to write negative stories. It wasn't profitable or productive or popular. But there was a storyline between Keane and McCarthy that had been tipping away for a number of years. And that was the start of the seeds of distrust between the two men. They were and are polar opposites in characters.
We hadn't been writing about it, and it was for the preservation of relationships to a certain extent. It was for a kind of easier life in some way, and in other ways it was for professional reasons as well. It was a trade-off, a largely unspoken trade-off. They knew you weren't trying to hang them a bit, you know, so that was all kind of part of the landscape.
A decade later in Saipan, Mick McCarthy was no longer Roy's senior teammate. He was now team manager, and the rift between them was deeper than ever.
Keane was dealing with off-field issues. McCarthy wouldn't have been a paternal figure to him the way Charlton might have been. So at the time we got to Saipan, you know, their relationship was, which already had been fragile, was on the point of collapse.
He always comes well dressed, Stephen Watson, doesn't he? Of course, always.
Hey. Stephen Watson was travelling with the Republic of Ireland team for the first time, which presented its own challenges.
You know, for the player, I think, because
I didn't know as many of the Republic of Ireland players as I did the Northern Ireland players, so it was more a chance for me to try and get to know them.
Leeway in terms of opposition. So
that left him at a disadvantage compared to some of his rivals.
And a lot of players who play in the Premier League.
Superb. Happy days. Thank you very much indeed.
All right.
Thank you very much. Super.
Michael. Those kind of connections were important. At that stage, I probably would have had phone numbers for at least half of the international squad.
Relationships in my job are the most important thing. Building relationships with sporting stars is absolutely key. But as it turned out, having those relationships didn't actually matter when the Roy Keane story broke.
The World Cup was huge. It was only Ireland's third World Cup. And in the previous World Cups, the country was shaken and stirred, and it was a national event. So everything that the team was doing was newsworthy.
If the Republic of Ireland were going to be successful in the World Cup, there was a huge feeling before we went there that Roy Keane was going to have to be the catalyst for success.
Next week, Mick McCarthy's Ireland take on Hiroshima in a football friendly. And today the players had their first training session on this side of the world, following almost 24 hours of travel from Ireland.
Finally, the press got their first chance to see the team in action. The training ground was built specially for them, but there was something reportedly missing.